7. I'm 85. My Amish mother warned me before my wedding night. I ignored her. My hands still go cold when I hear a wooden bed frame knock once against a wall. Not twice. Once. The room comes back before I can stop it. The wash basin with the blue chip along its rim. The lamp smoking at the wick. The white nightdress scratching the soft skin under my arms. Outside, a horse stamps in the mud, and somewhere below us, a spoon drops into a tin sink. Nobody comes upstairs. That's the thing nobody tells you. My mother had caught my wrist that morning beside the pantry door, her thumb rough from lye soap, and said, "Sarah, when he closes that door, don't forget you belong to God before you belong to him." I thought she meant prayer. I remember, no, wait. She said it the night before, while she pinned my veil. Her mouth barely moved. Why did she look frightened? Why wouldn't she say more? What had happened to her behind her own closed door? And why, when I finally understood, did I still obey the silence she was trying so badly to break? My husband Eli stands near the chair pulling at the seam of his left sleeve. He looks younger than he did at the altar. I love him. I think I do, but my body has already heard something my mind hasn't. Then he reaches for the lamp, and I'm 17 years old again. I'm 85 now. Quick pause. My name is Sarah, and this is Rebecca Amish Home E. If these stories stay with you, if they make you feel less alone, subscribe. It's free, and it's the reason I can keep telling them. Tell me in the comments, what warning did someone give you too late? And if you want to go further, a super chat or a membership, that's you telling me these voices are worth hearing. That keeps this going. Now, back to what happened. The rule was never written on a wall, and no bishop ever stood in the meeting house and said it plain. It lived in the way women lowered their eyes when a girl's wedding was named, and in the way mothers folded nightclothes without speaking. We called it obedience, though nobody explained where obedience ended and fear began. The Ordnung shaped our hems, our buttons, our Sundays, and the space a wife was meant to take inside her own home. I learned it before I learned long division. At 12, I watched Aunt Miriam slide a bruised wrist beneath her apron when Deacon Yoder came through the door, and every woman at the table looked down at a bowl of snapped beans. Not one of us asked. That was the lesson. Silence could sit among 6 people and be treated like good manners. A wife's body belonged to marriage, and marriage belonged to God. That's the thing nobody tells you. When a rule is taught through faces instead of words, you start obeying it before you know it has a name. It shaped the small hours more than the big ones. A woman served her husband first, even if the potatoes had gone cold on her own plate. A girl didn't ask why the boys swam in the creek without shirts while we pinned our dresses at the throat in July heat. When I was 14, I asked my sister Ruth why married women sometimes cried in the wash house where the steam hid their faces. She squeezed a sheet so hard the water ran over her knuckles and said, "Soap gets in your eyes." I almost laughed, because I knew that wasn't true. But Mrs. Stoltzfus was standing 2 tubs away, and she stopped scrubbing. Stopped. The room went so quiet I could hear a fly hitting the west window. I swallowed the question. Later that week, Ruth left a folded rag on my pillow, clean and white, with no note. That was how women warned one another. We gave cloth instead of words, and then we called the silence modesty. 3 weeks before my wedding, Ruth pulled me behind the smokehouse and told me 11 words. I counted them later, because counting felt safer than understanding. Be still, pray hard, and don't make him feel ashamed. That was all. Mama gave me 2 warnings shaped like riddles. The first was about belonging to God. The second came while she buttoned my blue dress. A good wife learns which pains pass. She didn't meet my eyes. Eli had been told even less. His brother Amos slapped his shoulder after supper and said, "You'll know what to do." 6 words. That was our whole schooling. We could hitch a team in sleet, bank a stove through the night, and judge rain by the smell of wind. But nobody taught two frightened people how to care for each other when the door shut. Ignorance was handed to us like a wedding gift, wrapped neat, with everyone smiling. I'd known Eli since childhood, though I didn't truly notice him until I was 16. He fixed the loose wheel on Papa's market cart, then rubbed axle grease from his thumb with a corn husk because he was too shy to come inside. His ears stuck out a little, and when he laughed, one eye closed before the other. I loved that. I think I loved him. I don't know if I knew what love was yet, but I trusted the way he carried a sleeping calf, as if it might wake embarrassed. During a Sunday singing, he slid his songbook toward me, because mine had a torn page. His little finger shook against the bench. It was Tuesday when he asked Papa to court me. No, Wednesday. I always get that wrong. Wednesday, because Mama's molasses cookies were cooling on the windowsill when Eli arrived. The days before the wedding were full of work that looked like preparation. Women came with jars of chow chow, folded quilts, and advice about yeast. Mrs. Byler told me to keep flour in a tin because mice were clever after dark. Cousin Lena whispered that husbands disliked cold feet, then turned red to her ears. Everyone laughed. I did too, though my stomach pulled tight beneath my apron. They taught me how to remove wax from oak and stretch stew when company came. Nobody told me I could ask for time. Nobody said kindness mattered more than duty. Mama packed my nightdress beneath 2 towels and a bar of lavender soap. Her hand stayed on the chest lid. She opened her mouth, then shut it, and I carried that. By sunset, the women had given me everything they thought a wife needed, except the one thing that might have kept me safe. Our room was above Eli's parents' kitchen, small enough that the bed nearly touched both walls. The lamp sat on a washstand with one short leg, so a folded church bulletin had been wedged under it to stop the wobble. I could still read the black edge of a hymn number beneath the wood. The quilt was green and brown, stitched in a broken star pattern, and one corner smelled faintly of cedar. Outside, buggy wheels ground over frozen ruts, then faded toward the main road. It was colder than I expected. My bare feet found a crack between the floorboards, where air rose sharp as creek water. I wore the white nightdress Mama had sewn, with 3 shell buttons at the throat and one sleeve tighter than the other. Eli stood beside the chair, tugging that left seam again and again. He took off his hat, though he'd already removed it downstairs, then gave a small, lost laugh when he realized his hands were empty. Neither of us looked grown. He asks whether I'm tired. I say no, though my jaw has started to ache from holding it still. He says, "We don't have to hurry," but his voice lifts at the end, as if he's asking me whether that's true. I nod, because nodding is what I know. The lamp flame bends when wind presses through the window frame, and the room goes dim, then bright, then dim again. Eli sits on the edge of the bed. The ropes beneath the mattress creak once. That sound. My hands twist the hem of my nightdress until the cloth winds tight around 2 fingers. He says my name, just Sarah. I look at him, and for 1 second I see the boy with axle grease on his thumb. I want to comfort him. I want someone to comfort me. He reaches out, stops, then reaches again. "Is this all right?" he whispers. I don't know what all right is supposed to feel like, so I say the word I've been trained to say. Yes. His hand moves, and I stop breathing. Not because he is rough at first, but because my whole body has gone hard, as if every bone has locked its own door. He notices. "Did I hurt you?" he asks. I say, "I'm fine." The lie comes out quickly, too quickly. He pauses, and there is a moment, one small moment, when either of us might have changed the night, but neither of us has the words. I remember Mama saying a good wife learns which pains pass. I remember Ruth telling me not to shame him. So when fear rises hot into my throat, I swallow it. Eli's breathing turns uneven. Mine disappears. I want to pull away and move closer at the same time, because I love him, and I'm afraid of what loving him now seems to require. He whispers, "I'm sorry." Then, "I think this is how." That sentence has stayed with me longer than any prayer. He isn't cruel. He is following a map drawn by men who never asked where women hurt. Afterward, we lie facing opposite walls. Eli says my name twice, softer the second time, but I keep watching the lamp smoke curl against the ceiling. My legs shake when I stand, so I pretend I'm only reaching for water. The basin is cold beneath my fingers, and the chipped blue edge scratches my palm. He asks if I'm angry. I tell him no. That part is true, or mostly true. I'm not angry with him. I don't even know what to call what I feel. I just know my teeth won't stop touching, little taps I can hear inside my head. He pulls the quilt up over my feet. That kindness nearly breaks me. On the bedspread, beside my wrist, there's a loose green thread. I tug it once, then again, and a whole line of tiny stitches puckers beneath my hand. Eli reaches to stop me, then lets his hand fall. Downstairs, someone closes the stove door. The iron clangs. Morning is still hours away, and already I know I'll never tell the story the way it happened. The plain fact is that neither of us understood what willing agreement meant. We didn't know that a wife could be afraid and still speak, or that a husband could stop without failing some test of manhood. In our world, marriage itself was treated as the answer to every question the body might ask. The ceremony had happened, so permission was assumed to have happened with it. 2 days later, Mama saw me lowering myself slowly onto a kitchen chair. Her eyes went to my face, then to the bread knife in her hand. She sliced the loaf thinner than usual. She didn't ask what happened. I didn't tell her. That silence wasn't empty. It was the rule doing its work. Eli brought me warm milk that night and stood outside the door while I drank it. He knew I was hurt. I knew he felt ashamed. But shame only made us quieter, and quiet was the one thing our community knew how to bless. I didn't know there were words for boundaries. I didn't know fear could make speech leave the body, or that saying yes after being taught you cannot say no is not the same as choosing. He wasn't trying to hurt me. That's what makes it worse. He had been told a husband should lead, and I had been told a wife should yield, and neither lesson included the care needed when two bodies don't move at the same pace. The silence wasn't one mother failing one daughter. It was mothers repeating what their mothers had survived, brothers joking because no man had spoken honestly to them, ministers praising purity while leaving married people blind. Years later, I saw a sentence printed beneath a drawing of two open hands. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. I stared at those 7 words until the page blurred. Anytime, even after vows, even after yes, even in a room above a kitchen with a green quilt and a lamp smoking at the wick, and I carried the grief of learning that one sentence had existed all along. In the months after our wedding, I learned to leave my body before I could speak from it. I would count the nail heads in the ceiling beam. There were 9, though one was only a dark knot, and breathe in groups of 4 until the room felt far away. By the time our first winter ended, I could fold myself small without moving. I learned to keep busy after supper, to polish the stove latch twice, to mend socks that didn't need mending, to wait until Eli's breathing grew slow before my shoulders dropped. That was my system. I thought I was the only woman who could disappear while lying still. Turns out that's the community's best-selling lie. Eli stayed gentle in the ways he understood. He warmed my side of the bed with a warm brick and saved the crisp heel of each loaf for me. I loved him for that. I resented him too. Both things lived under the same quilt, and neither canceled the other. I learned to read his footsteps on the stairs. A quick climb meant he'd forgotten a tool. A slow one meant he wanted closeness and felt unsure. I would press my thumbnail into my palm until the sting gave me something I could control. Sometimes I'd think, "Tonight I'll tell him." Then he'd enter carrying peppermint tea, his hair damp from the pump, and the words would shrink. "You tired?" he'd ask. "A little," I'd say. We made a marriage out of small answers. By our second year, we had a daughter, with his uneven smile and my mother's gray-blue eyes. Holding her made something fierce wake in me. I promised her things I didn't yet have words for. I'd whisper while she slept against my chest, "You'll know your own no. You'll know your own yes." I didn't know where those words came from. I only knew they felt like a door opening. At quilting, women spoke around the truth because speaking through it felt dangerous. While snow tapped the windows like dry rice, Lena pricked her finger and watched blood rise. "Does it ever get easier?" she asked. Ruth didn't look up. "Some things get quieter." That was all. Mrs. Byler pulled the frame closer, and every needle began moving at once. I nearly said, "It still hurts me." My mouth even opened. But Anna Stoltzfus was under the table tying scraps into knots, and shame came over me like a hot cloth. Then Lena glanced across the quilt. Her eyes held mine too long. That was the moment I knew, not guessed, knew. She was carrying the same silence, shaped to fit her house. The pattern was called Lone Star. I remember thinking someone had named it wrong. There were 8 women around that frame, and every one of us was alone. Ruth's story came to me in pieces. Her husband, Jacob, was kind in public and frightened in private, though frightened men can still do harm. After their 3rd child, Ruth began sleeping in the pantry in summer, saying the bedroom trapped heat. I found her there before dawn, curled beside flour sacks with a towel under her cheek. She smiled quickly. "Mice kept me awake," she said. There were no mice. A month later, she asked Mama whether a wife could refuse when her body hadn't healed. Mama dropped a jar lid. It rolled beneath the stove and spun there, humming. "Don't put doubt in your marriage," she said. Ruth never asked again. The question became the sin, not the pain beneath it. That was how silence protected itself. Any door that cracked open was shut with prayer, duty, or gossip. 4 months later, Ruth was expecting another child, and nobody mentioned the morning she fainted beside the wash line. I was 72 when I first saw the word consent printed in a clinic booklet. Present tense is the only way I can tell this part, because even now I'm back there. I'm sitting beneath a poster of a red heart with tiny labels. The chair is blue plastic, cold through my dress, and a fish tank hums near the desk. My granddaughter Mary has brought me for a blood pressure check. I pick up the booklet because its corner is bent, and I've always straightened bent things. Inside is a drawing of 2 open hands and that sentence, "Consent can be withdrawn at any time." My thumb stops on withdrawn. The fish pump clicks. A child coughs behind me, and my body jolts so hard the booklet slips to the floor. My knees go weak, though I'm sitting. That's the thing nobody tells you. Sometimes one plain sentence can reach backward through 55 years and touch the girl no one protected. I read it again. Anytime. I'm not angry at first. I'm just sad. Devastatingly sad, though even that sounds too neat for what happens inside me. I grieve for the girl in the white nightdress who thought silence was goodness. I grieve for the young man pulling at his sleeve because no one had taught him how to ask and hear an answer. Eli had died 6 years before, and suddenly I wanted him beside me again. I wanted to show him the page. I wanted to watch his face change. He would have cried. I know that. He cried when our old mare died and hid behind the barn because men weren't meant to be seen doing it. We were both prisoners of the same silence. Though the bars cut me in places, they didn't cut him, and I carried that knowledge beside the old hurt, not instead of it. Later, I tried to explain it to a social worker with silver glasses and a purple pin. She said, "Why didn't you just tell him to stop?" Not cruelly. That almost made it worse. I looked at the purple cap she kept clicking and couldn't find a bridge between her world and mine. How do you explain that a word can be missing from your mouth because it was removed from your life? How do you tell someone obedience had been tied to heaven, family, food, shelter, and every face you loved? I said, "We didn't know stopping was allowed." She stopped clicking the pen. Her eyes filled, but she still couldn't understand. The community that formed me had no room for my truth, and the world outside had no shape for the silence that made it. I sat between them, old and shaking, holding a booklet light in my two hands. And still, there are gifts I carry. At dawn, I miss horses shifting in the barn, leather straps creaking while frost turned the rails white. That sound meant work was coming, but it also meant the day began with living things breathing near you. I miss bread from the wood oven, the bottom dark and smoky, the crust singing little cracks as Mama set it down. She always cut the first slice too soon, and steam wet the knife, and I miss my grandmother's hands when she prayed, the knuckles wide, one thumbnail split down the center from years of garden work. Her faith was not fake to her. Her love wasn't fake either. I am homesick for a place that hurt me. I can smell rain on the buggy road and feel grief rise beside comfort, and I refuse to lie about either one. The harm was silence dressed as holiness. 5 words. That's all it takes now. But beauty and harm can live in the same house, and pretending otherwise builds another kind of cage. I don't spit on where I came from. I still make apple butter in a copper kettle each October, and I still turn quilts over to check the back, because Grandma said hidden stitches show your care. What I choose now is speech. I tell my granddaughters the names of things before fear names them first. I tell my grandsons, tenderness is not weakness, and stopping is not shame. Sometimes I think of Mama holding my wrist beside the pantry. She was trying. Poorly, quietly, far too late, but trying with the scraps of language she had. I can be angry at what she failed to give me, and tender toward the woman who had never received it herself. The door stays open. I won't force it shut. If you grew up somewhere your own body was kept from you like something dangerous, I see you. You survived something, and surviving is enough. You are not broken because it took years to name what happened, and you are not foolish because love and fear got tied together inside you. Maybe your warning came as a riddle. Maybe nobody warned you at all. Maybe you learned to leave your body, count ceiling marks, wash 1 cup 3 times, or smile before anyone could ask the right question. Those things were not proof that you were weak. They were ways you stayed here. And the younger you, the one who froze, obeyed, doubted, or went quiet, doesn't need your blame. She needs you to sit beside her now and say what nobody said then, slowly and without shame. Your body was always yours. To the one still inside, you're allowed to notice what hurts. To the one who left, missing home doesn't mean leaving was wrong. To the one thinking about leaving, your questions are not betrayal. To the one who's married and only now understanding, late truth is still truth. To the one who recognized herself a few minutes ago, breathe. You don't have to solve your whole life tonight. And to the one who loves people who harmed her because they were harmed too, you don't have to choose a simple story. You can hold care without surrendering the facts. You can forgive without returning. You can grieve without calling the pain holy. Some truths arrive late because safety arrived late too. That delay does not make them less real. Wherever you are in this, I see you, and you are not alone. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you felt listening to this, or which small detail brought your own memory back. There is so much more I haven't said yet. I'm just getting started. There are stories I haven't been brave enough to tell, but I'm getting closer, one truth at a time. Subscribe to Rebecca Amish Home E if you want to stay for those stories. Not because they're easy, but because silence grows weaker each time one of us speaks plainly. And to the members and Super Chat family, you're the reason the next story gets told. If you want to be part of that, the door is always open. I'm 85 now, and I no longer confuse quiet with peace. I still carry the girl I was, but she doesn't have to hide from me anymore. Neither do you. Your body was always yours,